them, Odo somehow felt as though these pale, strange people, youths with ardent faces under their small round caps, damsels with wheat-colored hair, and boys no bigger than himself holding spotted dogs in leash, were younger and nearer to him than the dwellers on the farm. Jacques Pony, the farmer, the shrill Philomena, who was Odo's foster mother, the hulking bully, their son, and the abbot who, once a week, came out from Pianura to give Odo religious instruction, and who dismissed his questions with the invariable exhortation not to pry into matters that were beyond his years. Odo had loved the pictures in the chapel all the better since the abbot, with a shrug, had told him they were nothing but old rubbish, the work of the barbarians. Life at Pontesordo was in truth not very pleasant for an ardent and sensitive little boy of 9, whose remote connection with the reigning line of Pianura did not preserve him from wearing torn clothes and eating black bread and beans out of an earthen bowl on the kitchen doorstep.
"Go ask your mother for new clothes,"
Philomena would snap at him when his toes came through his shoes and the rents in his jacket sleeves had spread beyond darning.
"These you are wearing are my gianazos, as you well know, and every rag on your back is mine if there were any law for poor folks. For not a copper of pay for your keep or a stitch of clothing for your body have we had these 2 years come Assumption." "What's that? You can't ask your mother, you say, because she never comes here?" True enough. Fine ladies let their brats live in cow dung, but they must have Indian carpets under their own feet. Well, ask the abbot then. He has lace ruffles in his coat and a naked woman painted on his snuff-box. What? He only holds his hands up when you ask? Well, then, go ask your friends on the chapel walls. Maybe they'll give you a pair of shoes. Though St. Francis, for that matter, was the father of the discount, and would doubtless tell you to go without.
And she would add with a coarse laugh,
"Don't you know that the discount are shod with gold?"
It was after such a scene that the beggar noble, as they called him at Pontesgordo, would steal away to the chapel, and seating himself on an upturned basket or a heap of pumpkins, gaze long into the face of the mournful saint. There was nothing unusual in Odo's lot. It was that of many children in the 18th century, especially those whose parents were cadets of noble houses, with an appanage barely sufficient to keep their wives and themselves in court finery, much less to pay their debts and clothe and educate their children. All over Italy at that moment, had Odo Valsecca but known it, were lads whose ancestors, like his own, had been dukes and crusaders, but who, none the less, were faring as he fared on black bread and hard blows, and the half-comprehended taunts of unpaid foster parents. Many, doubtless, there were who cared little enough as long as they might play morrow with the farmers' lads and ride the colt bareback through the pasture and go bird-netting and frog-hunting with the village children. But some, perhaps like Odo, suffered in a dumb animal way, without understanding why life was so hard on little boys. Odo, for his part, had small taste for the sports in which Giannozzo and the village lads took pleasure. He shrank from any amusement associated with the frightening or hurting of animals, and his bosom swelled with the fine gentleman's scorn of the clowns who got their fun in so coarse a way. Now and then he found a moment's glee in a sharp tussle with one of the younger children who had been tormenting a frog or a beetle, but he was still too young for real fighting, and could only hang on the outskirts when the bigger boys closed, and think how some day he would be at them and break their lubberly heads. There were thus many hours when he turned to the silent consolations of the chapel. So familiar had he grown with the images on its walls that he had a name for every one: the king, the knight, the lady, the children with guinea pigs, basilisks, and leopards, and lastly the friend, as he called St. Francis. An almond-faced lady on a white palfrey with gold trappings represented his mother, whom he had seen too seldom for any distinct image to interfere with the illusion. A knight in damascened armor and scarlet cloak was the valiant captain, his father, who held a commission in the ducal army, and a proud young man in diadem and ermine, attended by a retinue of pages, stood for his cousin, the reigning Duke of Pianura. A mist, as usual at that hour, was rising from the marshes between Pontesgordo and Pianura, and the light soon...